Can U.S. citizens seek asylum in other countries? The concept of asylum is deeply rooted in international law and serves as a safety net for individuals fleeing persecution, violence, serious harm in their home country. Typically, the U.S. is often a primary destination for asylum seekers worldwide and considered a safe country. However, U.S. citizens can and have in fact in the past, under specific circumstances, sought asylum in other countries. Yet, there are conditions under which U.S. citizens must qualify in order to be granted asylum abroad. There are challenges that they face, and other countries are more proponents alternative to asylum than the refugee status. Asylum, as you know, is a form of international protection granted to individuals who cannot return to their home countries due to a well-founded fear of persecution. The criteria for asylum are outlined in the 1951 Refugee Convention and its 1967 Protocol, as well as various regional agreements and national and international law. To qualify for an asylum, an applicant must demonstrate that they face persecution based on one of the following reasons: race, religion, nationality, political opinion, membership in a particular social group such as LGBTQ, individuals survivors of domestic violence, or individuals from marginalized ethnic groups. Ultimately, asylum aims to protect or provide a pathway to rebuilding one's life in a safe environment. Most countries have established procedures for evaluating the validity of asylum claims to ensure the system is fair, thorough, and just. There is no obligation in the Refugee Convention, either explicit or implicit, to claim asylum in the first safe country reached by refugees. The definition of refugee focuses on whether a person has a well-founded fear of being persecuted in his or her country or origin. Whether that person traveled through several countries before claiming asylum simply has no bearing on the fear of persecution at home. It is all about the refugee's relationship with their country or nationality, not other countries through which the refugee may have passed. The Refugee Convention actually gives refugees a degree of choice as to where they seek asylum. In fact, in Article 31 of the Convention, it protects refugees against prosecution for illegal entry to a receiving country. In certain circumstances, though, the contracting state shall not impose penalties on account of their illegal entry or presence on refugees who coming directly from a territory where their life or freedom was threatened. One who enters or is present in their territory without authorization, provided they present themselves without delay to the authorities and show good cause for their illegal entry or presence. This is not a right of entry, but it is a protection against penalization if that person does manage to evade border control and enter a country anyway. So how can U.S. citizens apply for asylum in other countries? While the concept of the U.S. citizen seeking asylum abroad may seem unusual, it is legally possible. In fact, it has been done before, and in Canada alone, between October 2021 and September 2022, 827 U.S. citizens filed asylum claims in Canada. Now, to claim asylum, the key lies in meeting the eligibility criteria and proving that returning to the U.S. poses significant risk to life, freedom, or safety. Here are scenarios in which U.S. citizens may qualify, but this is not always the case. One being political persecution, where U.S. citizens who are political descendants, whistleblowers, or activists may seek asylum abroad if they can prove they face harassment, threats, or persecution due to their political beliefs or actions. For example, journalists or whistleblowers exposing government misconduct may face targeted threats or systemic harassment. Activists involved in contentious movements might experience credible threats or risks to their safety from both state and non-state actors. Another criteria are those evading social persecution. Individuals belonging to marginalized or vulnerable groups in the U.S. could seek asylum if they face violence or discrimination that is inadequately addressed by domestic systems. Members may include members of the LGBTQ plus community, individuals who have faced serious threats or harm due to their identity. Also, survivors of domestic violence who lack adequate legal protection or resources is another group. A third group is because of inaction or complicity by authorities. So asylum claims often hinge on whether the applicant's home country is unwilling or unable to protect them. So a U.S. citizen would need to demonstrate that their government failed to safeguard their rights, or the law enforcement actively contributed to the harm they face. Another group may be those in witness protection. So individuals involved in criminal cases, either as witnesses or whistleblowers, may seek protection abroad if they face threats and believe that the U.S. system cannot guarantee their safety. And so there's a breakdown in the criminal justice system. Now, there are major challenges with U.S. citizens facing or trying to seek asylum, because the hurdles due to the perception of the U.S. as being a safe country. So most nations assume that the U.S. citizens enjoy access to robust laws and legal systems, and there's adequate protection, and the U.S. is recognized as a democratic nation. So overcoming this perception would require substantial evidence to the contrary. So the applicant needs to have or meet the burden of proof and provide compelling documentation to substantiate their claims of persecution or harm or failure of the government. Evidence could include police reports, restraining orders, witness statements, medical records, photographs, documentation demonstrating harm or trauma. News articles have been used also as evidence to show threats of harm to the individual. Now, dealing with the perception of safety of the U.S., many countries consider the U.S. a stable and democratic nation. So this makes it harder for U.S. citizens to argue they cannot find protection within their own borders. So this is a hard threshold for most American applicants to meet. Also, asylum laws and procedures vary by country. U.S. citizens must navigate unfamiliar legal systems, often requiring local representation to ensure their case is handled effectively. There are several examples of countries where U.S. citizens have sought and received asylum, even though it's rare. There are documented cases of U.S. citizens, some famous, some more discreet, but the likelihood of success often depends on the receiving country's legal framework, political context, and willingness to accept claims from individuals in developed nation. Canada is often a haven and has rather progressive asylum system and has accepted many applicants from the U.S. under exceptional circumstances. Again, because this can impact the relationship with the U.S. For instance, LGBTQ individuals fleeing persecution by family or community members, individuals targeted by hate groups with limited recourse in the U.S. European unions have also accepted American applicants, including Germany, France, Italy. They process asylum applications from U.S. citizens, but applicants must prove that they face exceptional risks that the U.S. cannot address. Mexico and Latin America is also a very popular place for asylum seekers from the U.S. Countries like Mexico, Costa Rica, and Brazil have received asylum applications from U.S. citizens. These nations have a growing asylum system and may provide refuge under humanitarian consideration. Typically, governments are going to advocate for alternatives to asylum for U.S. citizens. In cases where asylum is unlikely or unnecessary, or there's inadequate documentation, these countries will advocate for other pathways to stay in the country, such as humanitarian visas. Some countries offer temporary visas for individuals in crisis, such as survivors of domestic violence or fleeing from natural disaster. Also, residency permits, which allows an individual to remain legally in a country, either for employment, family ties, education, and can provide another legal pathway to live in another country without seeking asylum. Another alternative is relocation programs. Certain countries and international organizations run relocation or sponsorship programs for individuals in specific circumstances. And also, dual citizenship for individuals is also an alternative for those particularly who have an ancestral tie to the country and can obtain dual citizenship and can provide a means for them to stay in the country and access protection. Famous Americans that you may be aware of is Bobby Fischer, who was a famous chess champion, sought asylum in Japan and Iceland because he was wanted by the US government. The US government wanted to arrest Fischer for violating sanctions against Yugoslavia by playing a chess match there in 1992. The US government warned Fischer that playing in Yugoslavia violated an executive order imposing sanctions on the country. And so when an arrest warrant was issued, he first sought asylum in Japan, but their government ruled that he didn't meet their requirement. And so Iceland invited him to be a refugee. Iceland granted Fischer citizenship, and Fischer died in Iceland. And we also know of the famous case also in 2013, while working as a government contractor, Snowden leaked highly classified information from National Security Agency NSA. He was indicted for espionage, and his disclosure revealed numerous global surveillance programs that the US was conducting that was run by NSA and Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance with the cooperation of telecommunication companies and European governments, and prompted a cultural discussion about national security and individual privacy. He sought asylum and received citizenship in Russia. So let me know your thoughts. Did you know that Americans can seek asylum in other countries? Although it is a high threshold to meet, Americans have been granted asylum in other countries with adequate documentation to show a case for it. It can be done, but again, the perception of the US as a stable democratic nation is often a very difficult hurdle for those seeking asylum to meet. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I do have a Move Abroad program that helps Americans relocate to various countries. So if you would like to move abroad and you have no idea where to begin, we will iron out the steps that you need to consider in order to move abroad successfully, such as the visa process. What's the criteria for you as an American to enter that country? What is healthcare? How to deal with your healthcare in the US as well as in the country, especially if you are on Social Security or on any of the state programs such as Medicare, Medicaid, how to deal with that living abroad, how to file your taxes while living abroad, because yes, as a US citizen, even though you may not be a resident, you are still required to file taxes. So those are the things that we iron out so that you know exactly what you should be doing regarding a move abroad. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and I will see you next time.